Live stream microphone check. Hi Darren, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming along. Visitors, members of the public, folks at home watching online, excellent. We're doing it all again. I'm wearing exactly the same waistcoat that I was on Tuesday, but it is a different meeting, that's for sure. Right, no practice evacuations, alarms intended this evening. If anything does go off, we do need to take it seriously, so please, in an orderly fashion, calmly go down the main staircase or the side staircase, and we'll rendezvous in the rear of this building in the Town Hall car park. Discreet use of mobile phones is fine. Please make sure you've turned them off. We will inevitably need a break, so at 7:30, but depending on what we're doing, I might look around the room and we might be a bit flexible with the precise moment of that break. I'm Councillor Darius Laws. I'm the chairman. I identify as a chairman this evening, but I won't be offended if you call me a chair, but I am a chairman. I am also a councillor for Rural North Ward, and I'll allow others to introduce themselves.
Councillor Moffat, Mile End Ward.
Councillor Paul Smith, St Anne's and St John's Ward.
Councillor Kayleigh Rippingale, Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Richard Bourne, Newtown and Christchurch Ward, and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor William Sunnox, Rural North Ward, substituting for Dennis Willets.
Councillor Thomas Rowe, Rural North Ward.
Lucy Bredman, Strategic Director.
Richard Clifford, Democratic Services Manager.
Mandy Jones, Strategic Director.
Phil Charles, Contact and Support Manager.
Vaughan Johnson, Technology Solutions Manager.
David King, Leader of the Council. I also have not changed my suit.
I've changed my shirt though, you'd be pleased to know. Okay, we've got some substitutions tonight. I think we acknowledged that. William Sunnox is here for Dennis Willets. Councillor Bourne, welcome by the way, welcome to Scrutiny. First time, hopefully we'll see you again. And you are substituting for? Great, and there's another substitution? There's not, is there? No, good, we're all good, all right. Okay, urgent items, there are none. Declarations of interest, councillors? I see none, okay, fab. We do have a set of minutes to approve from the 7th of October 2025. I think they're great, does everyone agree? That looks like that's passed then. You usually say it's unanimous? I think so. Okay. General, have your say. Item 6. I don't have an indication that we've got members of the public wishing to speak tonight. So we will move on. Item 7, decisions taken under special urgency provisions. There are none. Item 8, cabinet or portfolio holder decisions called in for review. None. We have a very low number of those, which is a good thing. Item 9, requested items by members of the panel. I've had none. I've got none tonight. No surprises. Good. Okay. So, item 10, digital strategy, but also item 11, customer strategy, because we're going to try and fuse these together since they are so interrelated, but we have officers in each area, so that's great, so we can have a detailed look at it. But I think Mandy Jones, Strategic Director, you're going to kick things off. And I would just point out, I've had a message today from Councillor Pearson, who apologised for not being here. He had a pre-arranged family matter, and 2 scrutinies in a week is tough. He was here on Tuesday. We didn't even get to his item in time. It was that busy a night. So that's just a little reminder that we all probably need to be concise with our scrutiny if we can, and that applies to me as well. And I've already asked Lucy here to kick me under the table if I start to waffle, because I do sometimes, particularly when I'm tired. So Mandy Jones, do you want to kick us off?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. We've got a very brief presentation which takes both strategies together, as you know, and it's really just to give you a clear structure to help focus the discussion. We're going to highlight the alignment between the 2 strategies, the joint focus and how they work together, and then we'll move on to the separate sections, and I'll do the customer strategy first, and then I'm going to hand over to Darren, who is online, because I don't believe he's not feeling too great tonight. He's online. We have Vaughan here as well to take us through the digital
Manny,
strategy.
just roughly so we can anticipate, are we looking at 10 slides or 200? What's the
No,
rough?
no, we've got less than 10 slides.
Great.
I think, don't quote me on that, but around about that.
Okay, that's good.
Very few, and my intention is to whiz through these at pace, because a lot of it's in the strategy. It's just to give you a kind of focus as well, to refocus the panel. So, next slide, please. So, both strategies are separate, but they do have a clear focus, but both share purpose and a set of priorities. They provide clear direction across not only our council services, but with Colchester Borough Homes and Amphora, so both are across all of our services and our companies. Both of them are about maximising value from our scarce resources, so doing the best we can in a challenging financial climate. They provide clarity of leadership, I think, ready for local government reorganisation, so it's about what we do to get prepared for that as well. We know that our demand is rising overall, but our demand is also rising for digital services. So it's about meeting that demand in the provision of easy to use, safe and tailored to customer needs services. It's also about using technology and data responsibly, as it says there, and providing ethical use of artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. So the strategies do work together, but they are separate. The customer strategy focuses on improving interactions on all customer channels, not just digital channels. It's about enhancing that experience, whether that's an online customer contact or whether it's person to person. The digital strategy, as it says there, it defines the platforms and the technologies that provide those services, but that underpin all services across the council in terms of innovative service delivery. And that includes, as you see, artificial intelligence and the infrastructure that sits underneath it. Both align with regional priorities, particularly initiatives such as the Essex Digital Partnership. They share a set of themes and really emphasise that one council approach that's about person-centred use of the digital as well. And the really important point here is that it's about continuous improvement. So we have already started work on a lot of what's in this strategy anyway. But what we want to do in a much more systematic way is use our data and insight to deliver those effective, efficient services. So really a better use of our customer data and the insight. So just in terms of the customer strategy, I've just got a couple of slides here. I wanted to just do a bit of context because research has shown that since COVID, there's been an acceleration in demand for easy-to-use digital services. People want to use online services, but they want them to be easy to use. So that we need to provide that, I think. And our financial pressures and our rising demand mean that we must make optimum use of the technology that we already have available. So we need to look at what we've got available and think about those customer journeys and make optimum use of that. Aligning with national digital standards. So, for example, with our website, the new design of our website, which Vaughan and colleagues are leading on, we need to make sure we use government design principles, which is user-centred design, making it easy, stripping it back so that customers can use it in that easier way. We need to build new partnerships, obviously, particularly in relation to local government reorganisation with our partners, but we also need to build on our existing partnerships to improve customer services. An example is by developing the work that's already going on that Rory Doyle and Michelle Tarban are leading on, who are here tonight, building on that National Neighbourhood Health Programme and the work of the Strategic Health Alliance. And we know that entails the development of neighbourhood hubs that address the needs of people with chronic health issues, which are often the same customers that we have. So actually working together to provide more joined up services will be more efficient and effective across the system. But also with local government reorganisation, we need to build on the opportunities that bringing county and district services together, like health, social care, education, children's services together can do to provide those more joined up services. Just really quickly on the customer strategy design, it was co-designed with staff, residents and our partners. So we had a series of workshops, focus groups, customer survey, one-to-one feedback sessions, and there was that strong appetite for digital access, but balanced with the need to retain in-person and telephony services, so person-to-person and assisted options. And I just put in there a kind of list of what the customers said, which was basically, we need that person-to-person contact, definitely. Our website needs improvement, and we've already kicked off a programme of work, as I said, around that. And there was a bit of frustration with the basics. Actually, how can they find the information and use those online services? But there was also a feeling that they had to repeat the detail over and over again because our systems that contained the information didn't really have them in the right format to be brought forward each time a customer contacted. So in terms of staff and leadership insight, it's the same picture. We need that much more customer-centric culture, less based in services, more across all the services. And we can join those that technology and the systems up to optimise them. A clear ownership and direction from senior leaders. And I am the sponsor of our Fit for the Future programme, Future Customer project, which involves the improvement of the website, the telephony and a continuous improvement plan. So we've put it into our transformation programme, and this strategy is an element of that as well. And there's just a bit about stretched resources. We know we've got really stretched resources, so it's better and it is cheaper for people to do easy transactions online, and that will free up capacity to be able to have person-to-person services where people really need it. So actually, if we provide those easy-to-use services, we will free up resource to be able to put into people with complex and challenging life situations. We set out a vision and a set of guiding principles. By 2028, that's by when we become a unitary or we go into unitarisation, our customers will have a simpler, more seamless, more effective service. And we will strive to be a council that's easy to do business with, using our existing and emerging technologies to enhance that efficiency. And also providing person-to-person support. So that's all that I've been talking about in a clear vision. It needs to be customer-centric and inclusive by default, designed around customer needs. It needs to be a one council approach, as I've said. Digital by design, human by choice. That's about building it simply. It's about having reliable services, but it's about having person-to-person services as well, not getting rid of them. This is about channel preference, about continuing with the services that we've got, but make them more efficient. Data is our superpower. So we need to use our customer data to look at what our performance is. And that's not just using that data to look at the speed of a transaction, but the quality of it as well, how we measure it and how we benchmark where we can. And then we need to take this across the council by empowering staff and providing what is the culture already in our customer service centre. And we have a customer service excellence standard there, but we need to make sure that is across the whole council. And there's a piece around being future ready and pragmatic, and I already mentioned local government reorganisation. So just a few examples. The last slide I have, which is about what we will do, and we've set up the strategy in terms of a set of strategic themes, and I've put some examples down there. So customer-led council, that's about designing around the needs of the customer, improving our telephony system to resolve simpler customer transactions in their first contact. We want people not to have to phone us a number of times for really simple transactions. We want to do it once. Making use of our residents panel to provide that insight, providing staff with a better knowledge base as well, and easy to access information, so it's easier for them to do business with our customers, and using our technology to give customers proactive service updates. And this is really important so that they know where they are in the process, and they are given reassurance, and we're using the technology to be able to do that. Customer focused workplace, I've talked about that, about the customer service standards. Digital first approach, that's not about what used to be called channel shift, it's about channel preference. It's about redesigning those services and those journeys for customers so that they want to do it online, because it's more efficient and more effective, freeing up, as I say, the resources to be able to use on person-to-person services. It's an evidence-led approach. We need to develop the methods of tracking experience and quality, as I've mentioned, creating those feedback loops. You told us this, we've done that. And it's about sharing our data safely across our partners, for example, with health, and across the council companies like Colchester Homes, so that we can do more for our customers and provide that holistic service. And it's about the continuous improvement. And we have a continuous improvement plan monitored by our Fit for the Future Customer Board that is about improving those services. So I'm going to hand over now. That's the sort of bones of the customer strategy and the connection between the two. And I'm handing over just for a couple of slides to Darren to provide more information on the digital side of the strategy, or the digital strategy.
Thank you, Mandy. Good evening, members. My name is Darren Kidson. I'm Head of Digital and Information Governance. Apologies for the interruption and the noise. I'm not going to read the slides to you. I'm going to hand over to Vaughan, who's going to take you on a very quick whistle stop. What I will say is, in terms of the background to this document, we've had some really positive support from not only Colchester City Council, but also from the Essex Digital Partnership in terms of our design principles and the way we've pulled it together. The content echoes the government's national playbook for public sector digital services, which was only released in February of this year, and also the more recent guidance around NCSC in terms of making sure that we keep our customers' data safe. I'll hand over to Vaughan, who will just cherry pick a couple of the points on the next couple of the slides, and of course we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Vaughan.
Thanks, Darren. Good evening, everyone. I'm not going to go over the strategy again. That's not the point of these slides. This brings the themes together. All of our strategy is grounded on themes. We wanted to make sure that we knew exactly who we're delivering for and what we're delivering. The key is it's grounded in reality. So everything you see in that strategy is achievable. We've looked at what we've got: resourcing, funding, the quick wins, what we want to deliver. When we actually look at the real world impact there, if you look at the third paragraph there, Mandy's picked up on it. I've already started work. We've replaced the contact centre. That wasn't fit for purpose. We ensured that that was swapped out. I managed to negotiate that with no additional cost, because we're holding suppliers accountable. They need to deliver. We need to ensure that we're maximising our investment. We're getting what we should be out of our suppliers, out of our contracts. And that removes any historical debt, as well as making sure we build governance and standards into everything we do moving forwards. We've delivered digital design principles. I wanted to write something that meant that every single supplier, every single contract, whether it's KPIs, service level agreements, how we manage that contract from day one, we know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and we ensure that we get value. That's the important thing. The other thing we've looked at when it comes to contact centre is using the data we've got. For example, voice calls, we're recording them now, we're using transcription, because agents that answer queries for customers are using the website, they're using the data off our website to answer queries. So we use a transcription, and we're going to be using the website data to ensure that, one, you get a single view of the data and it's correct. We don't want outdated information. We want to make sure it's one true version and customers get the right answer. But the other thing I want to do, or we want to do, is make sure that it's easy to navigate. My mother was quite elderly. She found it difficult to navigate online. We don't want to push people to services. We want to make it, and I mentioned this the other day, a preference. If we build them to the extent where they become a preference, that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be pushing anyone to any channels. We build it to the fact that it's so easy to use, simple to navigate, that they actually prefer to use that method. And that's what we want to do for voice, website, and all the other channels. We're also looking at how to use new technology. I mentioned governance and standards. It's important that we ensure that overrides everything. When it comes to artificial intelligence, it does have its worth. I use it a lot, but we need to be careful how we use it, what the data is, how secure it is, what we're using it for, that we get the permission of everyone to use that data. So governance and standards are going to be overarching all of what we do. The other thing we're going to make sure is customers at the heart of it, security and assurance at all times, and that comes to data, how we use their data, which is really important. I know I'm very keen to ensure that's the case, me personally. And then the other element is, I mentioned grounding in reality. We're maximising our resources internally. We're also minimising our spend. We want to make sure we get as much as we can by pushing value out of every single contract, every single supplier. We've got some asks here. It's around, small asks around Microsoft Fabric. I want to start looking at that, I want to start looking at that with Essex Digital Partnership and other authorities. We want to be able to start looking at how we can use data for our own residents to understand how we can improve services, how we can actually optimise what we've got. That's that continuous improvement that we need to ensure that life cycle's in place. But other things, like we're looking at a new planning and building control system. We're going to be using a similar design to Braintree, so we can look at saving a lot of time, effort and cost by adopting a 5-year configured programme via Braintree, use the work they've done, so we've got a good starting point and we can work on that and improve it from there. But we'll be sort of looking at how we can make it better. We can take what Braintree have got, make it better in Colchester, and then share our learning with Braintree and other authorities. The other thing we'd like to do is get a bit of a digital pipeline, but also within the community. I've worked with youngsters at Colchester Institute. I'm on the board at Essex University, and I'm very keen to get new talent in, use the community we've got and upskill them. We can do that via apprenticeships, and that can help us do a lot of the work we want to do with data and other sort of areas of this strategy. As you'll see there, they're small asks, but it's something that improves what we're trying to deliver, and we can do it at pace, because we really want Colchester to lead by example. We want them to be able to sort of show, and we are, Essex Digital Partnership and others, that we really can sort of lead from the front. And tendering and others that don't have a strategy are obviously waiting for our digital strategy, because what they've seen of it seems to go down well. Next steps, I've just put a couple on there. Like I said, the key to digital as well, and we wanted this in the strategy, is I know with my daughters, you can give someone obviously technology, but you've really got to get them to understand how to use it. We've got to train our own staff internally. They've got to know how to maximise the use of technology, get the most out of it, and that's a continuous learning curve, and we need to make sure that everyone within our authority is able to use it to the maximum capacity. And obviously, patience is key. Some will take longer than others, and we just need to be careful, and we need to be sort of supportive in how we sort of include them within the technology programme. And that's it. I didn't want to go too much into detail. I thought there could be some questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be. Okay, good stuff. Well, I'll just kick off and going back to Mandy. I really liked reading Inclusive by Default. And I've thought about it, and I thought about the analogy of creating safe cycle lanes to enable people to have a choice to cycle who want to, freeing up some space for those who need to get in a car. And I think to have it in black and white up there is quite comforting. We all know, don't we, there are many people in our lives who prefer the telephone, prefer in-face, and prefer digital. And there's moments for each of those and all of those. And as life moves on and we all get more digital savvy, then things will change. Gosh, I can still remember the conversations around Angel Court and taking away the front line staff there, and the impact. But change is inevitable. So I like reading about that. So thank you. Right, let's get into it then. So members, any questions? I see Councillor Smith first of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will try and keep very much the strategic issues as what we're looking at rather than the instances that we've got. I think the strategies that we're showing here are working well. A couple of areas that I'd like to ask for a little bit more on. Working with parish, town and community councils. That's going to become increasingly important under local government reform. I didn't see a lot about that in there, and I think that's an area that we need to look at, because if we're looking for those organisations to be helping and doing some of the things that the new bigger council is not going to be able to do, we need to be looking at how we can support them there. I'm also pleased about the way you're looking at dealing with those who are digitally excluded. I know from a presentation that Borough Homes did, and at this point I suppose I should point out both Kaylee and I are directors of Culture Borough Homes. For the Culture Borough Homes tenants, 25% of them do not have an email account. 12% of them not even have a smartphone of any sort. You know, these are the difficulties that our poorest communities are having. We cannot assume that people have got Wi-Fi connectivity. One young child came to the youth club at St Anne's last week and asked her what the Wi-Fi passwords were. And we said, well, I'm sorry, you can't have them. And the story was she'd been using the neighbour's Wi-Fi, but unfortunately they found out and they changed the passwords. But that's the difficulty. If you haven't got free access to internet, then these wonderful systems are not going to be any use. The final point, again, I was very pleased you picked up on the AI training. Don't forget about counsellors. There are some of us who know an awful lot about AI, and there are others of us who are somewhat deficient, and it would be great to have some inclusion for that in the training there. I can remember the days when I was on our digital task force for going forward. Sadly, those days are long past, Richard, aren't they, when we did things like that. Now, I certainly am in the laggard category, but I think we need to look a little bit at those. So I think I'd put up the parish councils and the exclusion rates as issues that we need to be very clear on.
Do you want me to come back on that? Yes, I mean, I think it's a really good point. There's a point for me about how it interacts with our community can strategy, which is about enabling. But the work, I think, particularly the work that Michelle, Tarbin and Rory are doing with health and the Alliance, and the connection that that has with voluntary organisations and local organisations and the neighbourhood health programme, I think will stand us in very good stead to doing that work in local communities. So I think we're also thinking through future in-person support in in areas that connect with the neighbourhood health hubs, but also providing more in-person support in housing and homelessness services, but actually utilising and enabling the connections with the communities that already exist there, I think needs to be a major part of the programme going forward. So it is, if it's not represented, I think we could probably strengthen that. I don't think that's a problem, and strengthen that connection, because I think it is a really key point, and something that we will need to do. The second point was about digital access, wasn't it, and the poorest communities. So we need to, I think, embed digital inclusion work within our customer-facing services across the council. We know that many people want to go online, as I've said, and we need to be able to provide easy, simple-to-use transactions, mobile-enabled, because lots of people don't even own a PC, so that they can utilise where they have those smartphones. But we can use in the communities, and I think this points to the community piece, we can utilise, for example, libraries which have free access to Wi-Fi, often have free access to PCs, often have digital access courses. In fact, I know that the Central Library in Colchester, which is reopening on the 1st of December, has a digital course on the 13th of February that people can sign up to. So we need to be better at kind of signposting around those and utilising communities to do some of that, to enable that digital inclusion. Yeah, and I think there's, I don't know whether Darren wants to come in, but I know that there are external funding opportunities that can be presented, or there's talk of it, around community skills programmes that focus on digital skills. So I think it's worth exploring that.
Darren, I see your hand. Do you want to comment at this point on that and anything else you have?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of points. With regards to AI enablement, not only for our staff but our members, please be assured we're putting together quite a comprehensive enablement and training programme to support members with the new technology, but also so they can get the very best out of the technology to fulfil their role as a councillor. In terms of digital poverty, as it's referred to, or digital exclusion, which is a result of digital poverty, the local digital funding round for next year begins again quite soon, and they're inviting applications for funding. What we will be pursuing is an application for free SIM cards, which are data SIM cards. And we're also looking at opportunities to recycle mobile phones, for example, working with the third sector so that we can provide those free SIM cards to enable people to get online. We're also going to be speaking to Colchester Borough Homes as well to see whether there's something that we can do around identifying people that are most in need at the point of sign up when they move into a new property, so we can ensure that they do have a level of digital enablement and connectivity. The other point, if I may, Chairman, which just goes back to the end of the presentation, was where we were talking about the asks. I just wanted to I reassure members the strategy is not dependent on those asks in any way, shape or form. They enhance the strategy, and those asks are not, of course, for scrutiny. They will be for the senior leadership board in due course by way of business cases. I just wanted to reassure people that we were not asking for money in the room.
Thanks, Darren. Just while we're on AI, then, because it's great that we acknowledge that this is a new era, and no doubt, when you're building a website, you're going to have some sort of robot to direct people in a certain way. I mean, that's happening, isn't it, already on commercial websites? But at the same time, I'm currently using ChatGPT on my Google phone because my Colchester computer is blocking chat. So I don't really understand that, to be honest. I can explain.
You can use ChatGPT on your Colchester device using Copilot. Have I still got you all? Because it looks like...
Yeah, go for it, Darren. Yeah.
Okay, so you can use ChatGPT. It's an inbuilt function within Copilot. The non-Copilot ChatGPT carries inherent risks, and I'm more than happy to provide more information about that if you so desire. In terms of AI, we must proceed, safely and cautiously. Government has released the AI playbook for local government, which we're following quite closely. And we've also formed an AI ethics board as well as part of our cybersecurity and information governance board. The AI ethics board will also be reporting into governance and audit as well, by way of reassurance. So we need to ensure that as an organisation we use AI safely, transparently, that our customers understand the benefit of using it and how we use it, and also we need to take them with us on that journey. But AI is not something to be worried or afraid of, but it is something that we need to embrace and make sure that we take people with us on that journey.
Okay. I will come to other members. Councillor Rowe, you want to talk on AI quickly?
Yeah, just very quickly on that point. I think I was involved in a G&A meeting at some point where I was subbing for someone, and I spoke about the AI strategy that we were putting together, and asked, because we use it at work, but internally we have very strict procedures around how we can use it, and obviously dealing with the customer data we have here, it's probably a very similar situation. Now, we have our own AI that we use. I obviously read the strategy, I looked at it, but I didn't see that that was sort of on our plan. It just mentions AI. Are we looking into, if we're going to have our own AI, is that part of it, or is that something that we're still yet to decide, and we'll decide that down the line?
I think there's two parts to that, and it's very easy for them to kind of sort of start to blend into one. The AI that we use to assist us with our daily work and the AI that we offer to our users and to members is part of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and that's Copilot. Within Copilot, there's a variety of AI agents and bots and things that you can use. And going back to my previous point, you'll be hearing a lot more about them when we start doing those enablement workshops with members. There's no desire, from my perspective, to build our own AI engine of any way, shape or form. The risk is too great. The cost
Apologies, I don't mean build our own AI engine. I understand that, but what I mean is, so we have I think it's Gemini, which is the Google version of it on our own. So it sits on our own servers, and we can verify and guarantee to our customers that the data won't leave our servers at any point. So I think sort of what you were pointing around earlier with respect to using ChatGPT and the non-Copilot versions of it, the data that you put into it can arise elsewhere in sort of conversations that other people outside of our organisation can identify, right? So what I'm trying to get at is the Copilot version that we have at the moment, is that explicitly for the use of Colchester, or
Indeed.
Is it part of a wider sort of, does it sit on a server which other bits of with other organisations have access to? So obviously we have a lot of sensitive data, and that should be something that we're aware of.
No, it's completely segregated. All of the interactions that we have with the 365 ecosystem, Copilot or otherwise, is completely segregated and private to us. The time when you will see Copilot and other AIs using our data is when we have published it for public record. So you can ask Copilot what was the latest policy released by Colchester. It will tell you. It won't tell you what we're doing behind the scenes for something we haven't published yet. The other point to make is that by using data and data unification, and referring to Mandy's point in the customer strategy and the engine that we might use for that, again, that would be within the same safe environment, using something called Fabric, which allows us to get a better view of our customers. So providing a single view of customer, a single view of services, whether that be services we provide or the third sector or the voluntary sector provide, so that we can best signpost our clients and customers for services that we may not directly deliver ourselves, but they still may be in need of. But again, all of that, and part of the AI ethics board and part of the AI playbook, is to ensure that all of that calculus, if you like, that's done behind the scenes is done within a segregated environment. In no way does anyone else have access to that outside our organisation.
Thank you. Vaughan, do you want to come in?
Yes, I was just going to say, obviously Copilot, when it comes to the internal usage, it's all on UK-based servers, and we're careful to ensure there's governance around that at all times. Any customer data that we'll be looking at, I mentioned the contact centre, that's going to be remain within the contact centre. We're going to be sort of testing what's on the website, but that's publicly available. So we're just looking at how we answer the customer queries and making sure that the data is correct, but the actual customer data will remain in the contact centre at all times, but using AI to optimise it, but it's segmented at all times. So we're being extremely careful. Thank you.
Okay, folks, let's make progress. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two questions. Firstly, it's good to see a forward-thinking strategy, so thank you for that. And the two questions I have, the first one's around data being a superpower. We've got a new health and wellbeing board that we've established this year. What are we doing around gathering information that's in the public domain and turning that into something that's a baseline that we can then see how projects are actually improving the wellbeing of people across Colchester? Are we doing anything around that to support those kinds of initiatives?
I think actually we've got Rory Doyle, who is part of our Health and Wellbeing Board, who has some knowledge around the kind of data, and just put his hand up there. Would you mind if he comes to the table and answers that?
Go for it, Rory.
It's okay. Apologies, I've got a cough speaking, Chairman, so I'm not just chewing an opal fruit or something. Starburst, sorry. So we work really closely as part of the Health and Wellbeing Alliance, and we've identified, Cabinet agreed in March, a place partnership approach, and the Council has a memorandum of understanding with the Health and Wellbeing Alliance, and data sharing with our partners appropriately, and more importantly, understanding health data to kind of model future trends and predict almost services and models of working is absolutely our intention. We're also doing some exciting work later on in the year around Beat the Streets, which you may have been familiar with before, and it's just giving that as an example where customers will have an invitation to provide information about their health and well-being, not just their health and well-being, but also how they feel about their place, whether they feel they have agency in their community and things like that. So we can utilise that as a baseline to then measure improvement, both in their health and well-being as a result of the intervention, but also kind of wider determinants in whether they feel they have agency in their place, whether they feel they're more connected to their community as a result. So it's just an example of things like that, and clearly be working with the team around data as well. So we've got a joint project with Colchester Borough Homes at the moment around our housing data and how that layers across with data held in primary care, so we can identify people who have conditions that are likely to be exacerbated by poor housing conditions, overlaid with the data that we have around our housing conditions, so we can target interventions towards them. So just some examples of work we're doing.
Thank you. And your second question?
Thank you. Yes, amazing. The second question is about what efficiencies or potential efficiencies have you identified? You mentioned agents on the website, for example. That's going to save a little bit of human time. What other areas have you identified that could bring some efficiencies?
Well, I didn't know whether Dan was going to answer.
No,
not a
go
problem
ahead.
at all. So what we started is we looked at historical debt. What I mean by that is we looked at the contracts we had, how we're using those systems. We're removing systems that we don't need or duplicated. We're looking at obviously the cost of existing systems because we're trying to reduce those down as well, because it's important to keep that value added. In the past, I think the polite term is rolling contracts, no more. We make sure that every single contract, we know how much it costs down to the penny, what we're getting from it, are we using it to its maximum? So that's the efficiencies we're getting out of the bat. I also mentioned about the website and the contact centre, how I want to align them more, or we need to align them more. The other elements we're looking at is other systems that could sort of bring together ERP and sort of systems that could be joined at once. We've got finance systems, we've got HR systems, so we're going to be looking at how we can start to get single systems that cover those different aspects.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, other members. I saw Councillor Sunnucks, but Mandy first.
I was just going to come back in very quickly just to say part of the continuous improvement plan is about simplifying those customer journeys. So, and simplifying handoffs, for example. So where there are multiple pieces of knowledge and it's not in the right place, and emails have to come in a number of times and we have to email people, which is a really inefficient way of doing things. If we can produce a form on the website that takes all that information first and foremost, and then the advisors are able to process that, then we can do it. And I think, Phil, you might have some examples of what that looks like, just quickly.
There is actually a form now on the website for that purpose. So one of the things that came up from resident panels and staff feedback was ability to find information on the website, which we've spoken about, and created a page on the website where you can find everything, where you can report or where you can apply. And if it's not there, then you can fill out a form, which we get all of that information first time. Like Mandy said, emails is great for instant contact, but the actual email customer journey isn't brilliant. We find ourselves going back and forth. So we get all that information first time.
Okay, Councillor Sunnox first, and then Councillor Bourne.
It's a great pleasure to find myself agreeing with Councillor Smith on digital access. I see it in my ward, in a rural ward. It's not great, and I think I saw somewhere that we're cutting out the digital access team next year, which really worried me. They came and did a very good course up in my ward, and people found it really helpful, and I must say they were very good. So I hope that we can scratch around and find some funding there. I'm also very happy to hear about the neighbourhood hubs idea and working across different bodies. I'm worried about the overall strategy. I'm worried that we're talking too much in strategic terms. We've got 3 more years of this council, and I feel we should be looking in extremely practical terms about how we go forward into LGR. And the way these things work normally is that someone's system dominates and squishes all the other ones. And I would ask the question of why we're doing any really changes to our systems, why we still have a capital budget for doing those things. Shouldn't we just stop it and concentrate on the basics? All the feedback is that it's the absolute basics that people want. They want to be able to basically get onto the phone and find somewhere. We need them to answer the phone. We need the planning department to answer the phone, for goodness sake. The damage that's being done by them isolating into themselves to the economy, I think is really, really significant. I talk to a lot of building people and developers and other as well as residents in my ward. Really serious. I don't know how much it costs to do these glossy strategy documents, all designed beautifully, and to do 2 of them. I can understand why we've got a customer strategy and a digital strategy, but the truth is that those 2 are probably emerging into each other. And we need a much more practical, this is only, I'm not suggesting we do anything today about this, but we need a much more practical, down-to-earth approach where we concentrate on small fixes. We don't try and make great big systems that all talk to each other. We just won't get there in 3 years. We'll still be, just concentrate on fixing the systems we've got, getting the community-focused hubs going on, and fixing the really simple, basic things. And I think we'd do a better job for our residents.
Okay, Vaughan?
Thank you. It's a good question. So the reason why we concentrated on the contact centre first is because it was failing. It wasn't delivering. We were losing connectivity. Agents weren't able to log in. It was a poor system. So we held the supplier accountable. And like I said, I managed to get them to negotiate, and we swapped it out, and that didn't there was no additional cost. So that was because it was failing. It needed to be swapped out, and now we're going to work on improving it in-house. We're working with them with no additional cost. The website is the same. It was failing. The search was failing. It's built on Dynamics. It's not accessibility compliant. It's a barrier to digital inclusion. So again, we're delivering that, and I'm doing that within, and I've mentioned that in previous cabinet reports, there's no additional cost. There's no additional budget to this. So I mentioned about grounding this in reality. That's exactly what we wanted to do. I was keen to say to Darren, look, if we're doing a strategy, I don't want to see a strategy that promises the world and doesn't deliver, because that's going to fall short. It needs to be a strategy that, why are we doing it? How are we doing it? You know, that's why we kept it really simple. And we're under financial challenge. We need to deliver for our customers, but we don't need to add additional pressure. And we're keen to ensure that's the case with this strategy.
Good. Good. That's exactly the language we need to hear. And we mustn't forget that we promise fit for the future savings, but we probably, would it be true to say that we've sort of given up on that?
Let's bring in Darren, and then I've got Mandy as well. Darren first.
Thank you. Just by way of reassurance, the cost to produce the strategies is zero. The wonderful design was done in-house and the content was produced in-house by the operational services teams. So just a bit of reassurance that, you know, we are being as prudent as possible. In terms of capital, there is no capital to spend on what we call SaaS, which is software as a service. So all cloud software services for our line of business applications. So planning, building control, housing benefit, housing, that kind of stuff. We can't capitalise it because it's cloud-based in any event. We do have to replace some systems that are end of life, that are out of support, especially if we're delivering a statutory service. We have no choice. We do have to replace those. But we do that in conjunction with our partners within Essex Digital Partnership, and we do that from an intelligent client perspective, ensuring that we are, you know, being very robust with the market and the suppliers, and ensuring that what we do will be for the shortest amount of time possible to take us through LGR, but also doesn't hamstring us when it comes to using data and sharing that data to improve our services. The other thing that I would say is that in terms of the systems that we do need to replace that are end of life and unfortunately potentially puts us at risk if we don't replace them, when we do replace them, as Vaughan mentioned earlier, we have a set of digital standards to ensure that what we replace them with is safe and robust, but we also share that approach with the Essex Digital Partnership and our neighbours to understand whether there's any opportunities or economies of scale to do so via pre-LGR. So we are as prudent as we can be.
Mandy.
Sorry. I'm not going to labour it because I think my colleagues have answered it very well. But I think just to say that you know, we're not doing the strategy first and then the action later. This is a twin track approach in that we're doing the action alongside of the development of the strategy. So we have a Fit for the Future, as I said, Future Customer Board. And in that, we have strands of work linked to the redevelopment of the website, which also has its own separate project board led by Vaughan and colleagues. We have an improvement in the telephony, so we're doing that. And this continuous improvement plan, which is all about the customer journeys and redesigning the forms and the back office and the knowledge bases and the training, etc. So it's not standing still. There are a lot of practical there's a lot of practical work going on behind the scenes.
I also wanted to pick up on a really excellent point you made, which is it's not about the cost, but it's also about, well, you know, who's going to lead, you know, when we go into local government organisations. So with the website, for example, I chose Local Gov Drupal. It's a local community. It's public sector for public sector, it's local authorities, so it's an open source. So what that means is anything that's developed in Local Gov Drupal is open to anyone, you know, any authority. So anything that Birmingham develops, Colchester gets. Anything Colchester gets, Birmingham gets. It's the same platform as Essex County Council website, and I'm using something, or we had to replace it, but let's replace it with something we think is going to be of use. It's going to be gov.uk standards. It's likely that will be adopted across the UK. So being very careful, you know, we don't want to make any decisions that one means we invest a lot of time and resource. It might not be money, but resource is still money. It costs for someone to do the work. So again, we've made really careful decisions and we want to make them open and transparent at all times.
Bonus question from me, and then I've had my time. What intrigues me is that, you know, when websites get updated and sometimes they're incompatible with certain browsers because there's a sort of a built-in obsolescence. I mean, what do we just have to accept that? Do we have, you know what I mean? Because I've got a mother at home who's got a very old laptop and she's quite happy with it. She doesn't want a new operating system and an interface, but she does want to get onto the council website. Even if her browser's a bit dated. So are we thinking about those people as well? Or are you hamstrung by other forces of how things need to be for security?
I mean, obviously we've got to be careful. I mean, the difference with the website is in the public domain. It's not private data, but then there are processes that are undertaken on there that need to be secure. So that's the only thing I would say is going to be a problem, where we need to make sure that security is key. The thing about compatibility is, again, it's fully accessible. It's WCAG compliant. The key is digital inclusion. So that will be the key factor there, but I can't promise it will be too backwards compatible for security.
I'm going to bring in Darren, and just before he does, I'm going to tell him that I've been teaching my son to use Adobe Premiere on a 2009 MacBook Pro, which was top spec at the time, and it's still there. So I've got a few other Macs as well, and unfortunately, in my experience, I struggle with Microsoft. I really do. I mean, they can't even design a keyboard that I want to use, because it sounds horrible and it feels horrible. And I realise that my MacBook is probably a bit more expensive, and that's why. But you have to convince me about Microsoft, folks, because again, Google, the phones are amazing. They created Google Classroom for teachers for free, and Microsoft are building hardware that's not talking to certain software unless you update it all the time. So I'm a bit cynical. But anyway, Darren.
I wouldn't say cynical, I'd say realistic. I'm sure you'll appreciate, similar to the pharmaceutical industry, the technology industry spends lots of money purposefully and willfully building in obsolescence and making sure things don't talk to each other. Unfortunately, it is private industry. What I would say, though, is just jumping back to Vaughan's point, WCAG that Vaughan referenced, that is a legal requirement that's placed upon us in public sector to ensure our website and website content is accessible by the vast majority of users, including mobile phone users as well. So we do have a legal compulsion as well to ensure that there's accessibility. In terms of retrospective browser use, the industry will overplay the security. It's good for you. It's the same thing the banks do when I can't draw money out when I'm abroad. They're doing it for my benefit, allegedly. But unfortunately, we're in a private sector industry when it comes to the equipment that we can choose. I don't think central or local government really want to crowdfund tech at this stage, but we will ensure that our systems are accessible by the vast majority of users. And I think the Microsoft discussion, that's probably something that we can have at a later date. More than happy. And just for your reassurance, I'm not a fan of Apple or Microsoft. I loathe the pair with equal contempt. But there are alternatives, and I can talk to you about that.
Okay, Mr. Geneva. Councillor Rowe, you've got a point, and then I think we're probably going to get to the end here. Oh, Mr. Vaughan, I do apologise. Yeah, Councillor Vaughan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to go back really to the kind of build on the point that my colleague was making, because I was going to ask a reasonably simple question. I mean, most organisations in the run-up to a major reorganisation have freezes. They literally do what you're suggesting. They lock everything down, other than burning platforms, which obviously you have to give. But I was going to ask more about what the policy is for convergence, because the work that's also got to go on is, I don't think, one council system will eat all the other council system, but you're probably going to wind up with one system across. So I think that's quite an important element of the strategy going forward. But actually someone raised health, so I just wondered what assurance you can give me about the problems that health have had with their digital strategy, in particular around data. And I mean, the first big problem they're having is data quality. They're sucking in data from so many ancient legacy systems, and the quality is so poor. I think they've got special names for it, but I can't remember them all. But I mean, it's even fooling the AI. They can't train AI on it because it's just too scruffy. So there's a big issue there. And then there's a big issue, probably not quite so prominent here, but huge in health, about who owns the data. There's a huge debate. Do we own our own health data? Which clearly we don't, but people like to think they do. And of course, that then raises the even bigger issue around information governance, about how do you lock people out from seeing my data, which is at a personal level. And people have built models where data permissions actually exist right down at the lowest possible data level. So you can look at that bit, but you can't look at that bit. I don't see any proposal to put that in because it's fiendishly complicated. But then there's the other one at corporate level. You've got all these malign actors who might come along and steal our data. Well, I've got news for you. They've already got it. But I just wondered around that whole issue. You did mention information governance. but there is perhaps, I mean, obviously you've got the cyber threats to throw in there as well, but that issue around data ownership, data management, data governance and so on, just like to be reassured that those are all being taken into account.
Go for it, Darren.
Certainly, yeah, absolutely valid points. In terms of information governance, we have a very robust, I mean, if I can say, you're absolutely right, the lines of cybersecurity, information governance and data protection are no more converged than they are today and will continue to be so. We have a really robust approach in terms of our procurement approach to any new technology, any new software. On Monday at the managers conference, we launched our digital pipeline approach, which is forming a board to ensure exactly as you described, that people almost, it's not so much a freeze, but there is additional scrutiny placed upon any digital technology software procurement from that moment forth, in terms of ensuring it has the appropriate scrutiny from data protection, information governance, cyber security and technical design, i.e. will it fit and work with our equipment? Is it a wise investment? How does it meet LGR? How does it meet our strategic objectives? And what is the environmental impact of purchasing such a thing? But turning to the data aspect, within our procurement requirements, our specifications that we send out to the market, there's very, very strict standards that they have to meet. If they can't meet them, we don't even entertain them as a bidder. We won't even look at them. On top of that, there's something called a data protection impact assessment, which is conducted by our data protection officer who's within my service. If it doesn't pass that, we're not buying it, we're not getting it, we won't be using it. On top of that, there are secondary data sharing agreements, which have to be in place and are reviewed annually to ensure that they are fit for purpose, where we are sharing data with our partners, such as health or registered social landlord, or whether it's DWP or something like that. So this is taken incredibly seriously. We need to ensure our customers know and feel safe when they interact with us, especially if we want them to do it via choice. So please be assured there are several steps that are in place to ensure that moving forward, A, we're not buying things unnecessarily, and B, we're aligned with LGR, and more importantly, that we're ensuring what we're buying is safe, is compliant, and will look after our customers' data for us.
Okay. Councillor Rowe, and then we'll be moving on.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, it's been a long week, if this is sort of a silly point to make, but I think it's all very lovely the way that we put these strategies together. There's lots of high-level themes, lofty ideas, and some great thought process of how these things are going to sort of work in the future. So my concern around this is sort of around the way that we present these things, as if it's sort of something that we haven't already thought of in the past and that we haven't done. And I'm sure we already have both of these strategies in place. And I think ultimately, from my perspective, I would like to see a little bit more around the detail on sort of the savings, the efficiency improvements. You know, what are we actually tangibly going to do? I get the themes, and I understand that we have to have a slide of, you know, this is where we want to go, this is what we're planning to do, LGR is a big thing, get that completely 100%. But what are the actual things that we're going to do? And just a point for the future, really, that in the future, I'd really like to see that just a bit more tangible. What are we actually scrutinising here, rather than just the high-level things? But thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
That's a good point. Obviously, we wanted to keep the strategy at a level that was easy to comprehend, understand. When it comes to ROI, we're building that in now, that digital pipeline, that procurement, you know, we're building into the contracts up front. Even with data, you know, we're making sure we cover everything, the full life cycle. So exit management is key. You know, we're the data controller. You know, Colchester City Council is the data controller. So we're responsible for our data. So we're trying to build in, well, we're building in governance standards throughout the whole life cycle. And that ROI is really important. Already, when it looks at the contact centre, it's now stable, it's working. Interactive voice responses are far better. They're built better. There's no robotic voice. You know, it's a far better system, and we've done it with no additional cost. So everything will be scrutinised. Otherwise, what's the point in doing it, is my opinion. And I'm a resident as well, so I want to see value, basically.
Andy?
Yeah, I do think it's a good point as well. And I think there's something about a strategy that communicates the leadership as well, and the clarity of our purpose, and particularly around all of the channels. You know, we are not trying to shut down our channels. What we're trying to do is to use them more effectively, and build digital into the way that we do our transactions with customers. And I think we've got behind these action plans and programs of work like the website that's going on. We've got a continuous improvement plan, examples about improving our telephony system, improving our IVRs, what are they called? Voice recognition. So our voice recognition to be able to signpost people better. You know, there's a lot of work going on around those. And I think it's also, for me, the customer strategy has enabled a buy-in to that approach across the council, because the work that we did to develop the strategy was about working with staff on what their issues were. We contained that insight, and we thought about how we then build what staff are telling us into a generalised approach across the council. So it's not just been about the glossy document. It wasn't written overnight. It was written with people, and providing that direction and leadership. So there is, just to reassure you, there are action plans underneath it, but it gives a clarity of direction and leadership.
Thank you. Okay. Unless there are any specific recommendations that any members wish to make tangibly, I feel that the thrust of this examination has been really healthy. I hope you found it helpful as well. And I'm happy that we note these reports and both of these strategies to go forward, unless there is anyone who has anything specific. No. Okay, we have consensus that this has been a useful examination, and I thank you for your time, and those online. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you. Good evening.
Safe journeys home for those that are moving on. We'll just take a couple of moments to progress. Thanks everyone. So we're going to be moving on to item 12 very shortly. We're going to be looking at the Heart of Grinstead Phase 1. We're going to invite some new colleagues and friends and folks to join us at the table. I'm aware we've got 2 visiting councillors who wish to have their say, and we've also got a written statement from another councillor which we'll have read out. Okay, first of all, then we'll probably have Councillor J. Young, since that is before T in the alphabet. Councillor J. Young first to have her say. Thanks, everyone. Shall we, before we do that though, should we go to like a wide shot on the camera and reintroduce new folks in the room, just for clarity for those watching at home? Shall I start on my extreme right?
Good evening, members. Lindsay Barker, Deputy Chief Executive.
David King, Leader of the Council.
Lee Rainforth, Major Projects Director. Robert Singh, Director of Research and Enterprise at the University of Essex, but also a Heart of Grinstead board member. Rory Doyle, Strategic Director.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you. Okay. I'm looking at the clerk. He looks happy with me, which is good news. Okay, good. Right, we're getting there. Councillor J. Young, have your say. Over to you.
Good evening, Chair and councillors. I think it's a really important point in the development of this project. We got planning consent last week, so we're really looking forward to progressing this project, and we hope to get your blessing tonight. I wanted to focus a bit on what's already been said in the last item, particularly about the neighbourhood priority programme for health, and we've been identified as a sort of pilot project for that. I think Councillor Naylor frequently reminds us, and those of us who've spent any time at the hospital understands the pressures that Colchester Hospital is facing at the moment. So in terms of going forward, the neighbourhood model for health is about making much more accessible in our communities. And Greenstead is really well cited for actually kicking off that programme. And it won't just end up in Greenstead, it will be in other communities as well. But it's kind of the test pilot actually. The Heart of Greenstead project, it will set the scene for that development of work. So although this is a building project, it will be a building project which will lead to a transformation of services for local people, which will not only serve the Greenstead population, but further afield. So the practice in Greenstead is aligned to Abbey Fields, which also covers Elmstead Market as well. So it will cover a bigger footprint. Included in the project are other services, such as library services. Now, those of us who are keen on library usage will know that second to the Colchester main library, Greenstead was the highest usage. So that not only serves Greenstead, but it serves a much wider area as well. And so people coming into Greenstead to access services will be able to do so if we have more available to them. So I just wanted to sort of focus on that a bit. I know others will talk much more about the indices of multiple deprivation, and you'll get some data around that. But this has been a very community-based project, and rightly so, actually. So in the past, we had the Estate Regeneration Fund that we thought was going ahead, which would have seen a transformation of the same sort of footprint that Heart of Greenstead actually covers. But that master plan led to a lot of consultation with the community, a lot of expectation, which was never fulfilled. People were disappointed about that. So this time, it's been absolutely right that this has been a co-production with the community. I know you've got one of our board members, well, a few of the board members actually here tonight, but in particular Rob, that will kind of give you a bit of perspective from his role actually on the board. And I know the leader of the council will cover some of the governance arrangements, and you've got a whole field of other people to address you tonight. But for us in the ward, this is a vital project, not only for the Greenstead ward, but for the wider community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Young. I think I won't say anything to that. I will invite Councillor T. Young up to the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I first must say I've got an other registrable interest in this item. So after I've said what I'm going to say, I have to leave. Mr. Clifford has assured me that is the case. I'll have to do the same at Cabinet on the 10th of December. So sorry I won't hear your debate, but this is a very important project. Echo everything Julie just said. We've had past projects in Greenstead that have promised investment and regeneration, and they haven't occurred. For some real unreason or other, they just haven't happened. So the improvements, and there have been improvements on Greenstead over the last 33 years that I've been a councillor for that area, but they've been piecemeal. There's been no integration or connection between them. And that's not how it should work. I think you appreciate that, Chair. So Greenstead residents and the community feels let down. There's cynicism, there's doubts about the council that Rory and others who attend the Heart of Greenstead project board meetings have felt with great force, and had to build that trust. And I think that's really important that that happens. So the Heart of Greenstead project is a real test case for that, I think. It's been the last 4 or 5 years, it's been dominating our thinking. We've really made efforts to engage with the community, because it's got to be resident and community led, and a number of organisations have tried and partly succeeded, I think, this time in doing so. As Julie said, it's not just about buildings, it's not even mainly about buildings, it's about building a community, building community facilities, and making the best of it for our community and the people we represent. So it's £6 million of the town deal funding that we got under the previous government, continued by this government, and we've got to use that to its best advantage. I will mention the indices of multiple deprivation because the figures have just come out, and we saw the Magnolia local super output area in the 10% of the most deprived in the country. That's something that I'm not going to apportion blame as to why that's the case. I don't think that's right. We're not in the business of apportioning blame. We're in the business of looking to the future and making things better. And that's what we want. But I think the figures are very stark around poverty and deprivation. The one that always gets me is mortality rate, life expectancy. When you represent a ward and you know that on average people are going to live 10 years, not as long as people in other wards, that is really stark. That's not fair. That's not just. And after a third of a century on this council, the thing that motivates me to still want to be a councillor and improve things in Colchester and in my ward is that tackling injustice and unfairness that is clearly out there by those stats. Health inequalities always been an issue, continue to be an issue. I've had a number of strategies to try and make it better, but there are still the figures for COPD, heart disease, certain types of cancer, diabetes, are still really too high. And, you know, we're hoping that the NHS being involved in this project from day one, and now the new GP surgery or the revamped GP surgery and health working in partnership is going to have an effect on that as well. So what you're looking at basically is a tender and contract. This is as part of what you're scrutinising tonight, but it's important that we go ahead with this project, and that's the first stage of doing so. The process has been laid out by the government, previous government and this government, and we followed it to the letter. There can be no doubts about the process. The Heart of Greenstead Project Board, of which I'm a member, and as chair of GCA, that's why I've got a Greenstead Community Association, that's what I've got to leave, that feeds into the We Are Colchester Board that David sits on. It's really, really important and has that democratic accountability that we all strive for as well. What I'll leave you with, Chair, is what we want is hope. Hope is so important, and Greenstead residents have been devoid of hope for a long time. This project gives them some hope, and I hope that you will find it in your hearts to support this going forward tonight and make some positive recommendations to the Cabinet.
Thank you. You can watch us online, Councillor Young.
I don't think I'm allowed to. They'll police me.
Okay. Let's now have the submitted statement from a councillor who couldn't be here physically in person or digitally. Over to the clerk.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a statement from Councillor Akinyemi. I joined the Heart of Greenstead Board as a resident before becoming a City Councillor for the ward. The project has gained the trust of the local community because of its inclusiveness. I refer to trust because at the beginning, for me and many other Greenstead residents, that was not the case. While the project was not resisted, it wasn't warmly thought about due to the feeling of being done to and the top-down approach of many projects that had existed on the estate. The board has matured over the time it has been ongoing. The residents have come to welcome the project as they are soon noticing that the project is beyond building bricks but building strengths in our community. The project brings together and will be an important factor in strengthening joint working approach of various stakeholders, organisations and people working to improve vital determinants of health locally. The Heart of Greenstead Board draws on strategic oversight widely whilst ensuring that the community voice is not lost or ignored through the engagement work of the Active Wellbeing Society. Some of the results that we can celebrate are the Greenstead Fun Day, which took place in the summer. Feedback from the event from stakeholders and residents were fantastic, and community cohesion was reinforced. The expansion to the local GP surgery, etc. Support for the project is very strong, and we look forward to the legacy that the project creates in our community. And that's the end of the statement, Chair.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Okay. We will move on to the main presentation, which I believe Rory is going to kick off with. But just before we do that, should I just establish, Rory, roughly, you know, given your PowerPoint work and your delivery, roughly how much time do you want for this? Because if we could make a decision to have a comfort break now for 10 minutes and come back, or we could have your presentation if it's not going to be an hour long, and then Should we crack on then?
I'm also mindful that I think Rob kind of prepared a bit of a statement to share with the panel, and that might be a good place to start. And certainly my presentation will be very short because it's so eloquently already been put. Well, I am just mindful, though. I know the MP submitted a written statement, so I'm not sure if I'm looking to the colleagues in the Democratic team whether they have that available to hand, but I know Pam would appreciate that being read out.
I haven't had sight of it. If it's not negative towards any other political party, I'm happy to have it. Well, I'm just being straight because I haven't seen it. But if it's if you've got time to find it, then fine, we can have that. But in the interim, then should we have Dr. Rob? Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me here. So I'm here as a Heart of Greenstead board member, but my substantive job is I work at the university. And I really wanted to come here and take the opportunity to endorse the proposals that are coming forward for the tender and contracts. I will touch on some of the areas, there'll be some commonality with what's been said before, but actually I wanted to also explain a bit about how the board has worked and why it's of such value. You might wonder why I'm on the Heart of Greenstead board as the University of Essex, and there are a number of reasons for that. So one is an obvious one, that Greenstead is very near to our campus on Colchester. Two, because of that, our students, we have quite a large student population living in Greenstead. The third one, though, is also partly through collaboration. Being part of the board enables us to fulfil our mission, in line with our founding principles, to benefit the communities of Essex and surrounding areas. So that's enshrined in the founding principles of the university and what our objectives are to do through education, but also actually through our research base. And as such, you'll see that in the Civic University Agreement that was signed in 2023 with Colchester, it would have been Borough Council still then, Tendering District Council, Essex County Council, and the ICS, that Greenstead is specifically mentioned in that document because it's of such importance. I would like to, so I'm going to compliment the council in actually setting up the Heart of Greenstead board as a structure to bring forward these developments, because there are a number of ways you could have approached this and different kind of governance structures, but there are benefits to the way that this has been put together, and I'm going to highlight two of them. One, it enables collaboration between a range of stakeholders on the shared missions that we're discussing, and that's really important. As a university, we've had a number of projects as a result of this with the community. I don't have time now to talk about it. Happy to discuss it though afterwards if anyone would like to find out more about those. But also, it provides a really, really vital function in connecting the community to the developments that are being proposed. And that's very important because, I mean, you heard this earlier, because I got a real sense during the early meetings that the community was one that felt that things had been done to them and not with them, and also that there had been promises made but not delivered. And in order to actually bring forward a successful future developments and initiatives, you have to address those things first. There's been some really good work. Essex Pedal Power, I'll highlight, you've heard about a few of the events. Essex Pedal Power has provided some material developments to the residents at Greenstead, but the infrastructure developments that are coming forward for approval are absolutely key. And here is an opportunity, I think, to get things right for the communities in Greenstead. People have already discussed the need in Greenstead. Colleagues here will know much more about indices of deprivation than I do, and so I'm not going to rehearse those arguments. Also the determinants of health outcomes as well. And what's being proposed can help address both of those areas, and also actually provide facilities that are fit for purpose in place of ones that aren't necessarily anymore. So it was really just to state that actually there's been a lot of hard work done through the board to get these proposals right, and to offer my endorsement as a member of the Heart of Greenstead board in the strongest possible terms.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, I have had sight of the submission from Pam Cox MP. So what I'm going to do is I'll read this out to save Richard's throat. So bear with me. I don't do this often. And then I think we'll break, because then it seems like a right thing to do. Leader, of course.
I'd like just 2 minutes before you do, if that's okay.
Why don't you go now and I read this again so that I get my, my oration right? Yes.
Anything I can do to help them get through
You go for it. You go for it.
My piece, and Julie touched on this earlier, was just to remind us about the governance piece. But I have to say, when I was looking back through the paper and listening to colleagues, knowing that there are some questions away from here about, do we need to do this? Absolutely we do. And you can look at any number of the stats, and the one about the 10% has stuck in my mind always. But when you look at the report that we've got in front of us, there are other subsets of that which should catch our attention if we got any residual questions. That's not the challenge for tonight. Our focus has to be the next steps. When you look at this place having amongst not just the most deprived, but having more deprived than 99% of all neighbourhoods across the country in terms of crime and health, then we shouldn't have to have any more of that debate about need driving the project. I absolutely, Rob, thank you, and the university and the other health partners are not here, because this is a very unusual and complex arrangement that's helped us forge relationships that we're going to take away elsewhere, across the district and up through at least North East Essex, and no doubt the government want to do it elsewhere. It's great that we're at the front of that national change, that we're a national pilot. We should be frankly proud. There's a bit of synchronicity, but more than that are those relationships that are being worked through. Last thing, Chairman, thank you, was the governance piece. You will, in early next year, for the 4th time, this scrutiny panel goes through the Town Deal project absolutely rightly. But I'd just say, a reminder, we have a We Are Cultures board, which is where I sit and thus have a role, and that's a pretty vigorous place too. And we have the ministry who look over our shoulder and rightly give test and challenge and expect to see the objectives that they agreed. This is their decision. This is what they said would be the priorities for us here in Colchester. And although it doesn't come through the Team Colchester envelope, which people know as a partnership with the County Council, looks at regeneration and renewal across the city, we are very much aware of it. And I want to sort of share with you, this is a priority for both councils, for the leaders of both councils. I hope that gives you a measure of assurance and positioning. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to double down, and for the benefit of any journalists watching, any people at home, the We Are Colchester board is an independent collection of people who are civic-natured, business folks, council representation. That was mandatory in order to make this the bids for the town fund. Some people are a bit confused about it, but it had to happen that way. So it's arm's length from here, and it has oversight to the projects. But I think I'm right in saying that the financial responsibility still sits within the city.
Absolutely right. We're still accountable. Yes. And so what we do here in this place, what we do as an authority alongside the county, there are roles we can do, no other can do. We have a particular and specific accountability for it. But all of us expect that we should use public money well to the objectives set and agreed with government. And thank you for expanding at that point. And the independent board, they have the responsibility. We play to them as we must, but we have our own responsibilities too, including here. Thank you.
And that bid that was successful, we got nearly 20 million quid of external money into Colchester. That bid involved a collection of projects, but we're not here tonight to debate whether or not we think that 6 million should be spent in rural North instead of Greenstead. That ship has sailed. I just want to make that clear for folks at home and any journalists. It's not And this has been going on for years, hasn't it? I mean, gosh, we've had lockdowns and Ukraine and all sorts of stuff in between.
We have, but things are being delivered, and here we are, a really great moment where we can go on to procurement. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll hear a lot about it shortly after I've had coffee, but before that, I'm going to read the statement from Member of Parliament, former councillor Pam Cox, and it's the first time I've seen it today, but I've looked at it. So it's Dear Chair and members of the panel, thank you for this opportunity to contribute to this important review of the Heart of Grinstead project. I wish to reaffirm my strong and ongoing support for the Heart of Grinstead initiative. The Town Deal projects initiated under my predecessor Will Quince laid the foundation for what is now a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver meaningful regeneration in one of Colchester's most historically underserved communities. This scheme is about far more than bricks and mortar. It is about people, place and potential. With £6.7 million allocated from the Town Deal, the project stands as a flagship example of how targeted investment can unlock long-term social and economic benefits for residents. Halfway. The vision for Grinstead features a modern health and community hub, improved public spaces and enhanced digital and transport infrastructure embodies the principles of inclusive growth and sustainable urban design. I'm particularly encouraged by the emphasis on community capacity building, digital skills and active travel. These elements ensure that regeneration is not only physical, but also social and economic. Grinstead continues to sit in the 10% most deprived communities in England, the only area in the city of Colchester in this category. It is worth placing on record that this area has the lowest healthy life expectancy of any place in Colchester, and it is categorised as significantly below the national average and deteriorating. These are people in our community living significantly shorter lives than many others. We must act to change this. I commend the Council's commitment to progressing the planning of this project in a way that supports the successful delivery of future work. The successful implementation of Phase 1 will lay the groundwork for future investment, including the potential to leverage new Pride in Place funding to deliver sustained improvements for Grinstead and the wider city. Grinstead has been allocated £2 million a year, every year, for the next decade, which will give residents the opportunity to make the most of the foundations that Heart of Grinstead gives us. I urge the panel to continue supporting this transformative project and encourage Colchester City Council and Essex County Council to maintain close collaboration with all stakeholders, residents, local organisations and government partners to ensure the Heart of Grinstead delivers on its promise to the community. Pam Cox, MP for Colchester. So that was the statement, and it is about 7:30, so I suggest we have a 10-12 minute comfort break and then we'll return, and Rory, you can kick us off. Thanks everyone. Okay, folks, we're just about to reconvene for part 2, having had a comfort break and some additional hot chocolate. And when I get the thumbs up that we're back on and we're streaming live, we'll proceed. So thanks very much for returning, and it's been a useful chat so far. We've got a slight context, but Rory, you're going to give us more context, and I think we'll then get into the nuts and the bolts. So off you go, Rory.
Thank you, Chairman. And a panel that agreed, my job's been made easier because colleagues have already made so eloquently the strategic case, which I was going to refer to and equally emphasise the partnership work that's brought us to this point. But I don't think I need to cover that. So I think the key thing now, and has been emphasised by the leader, is we're at a key moment in time. So we've just had planning awarded. So we're now at the point where we need to award the contract for construction. We've gone through a robust procurement process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite my colleague Lee to go through the procurement process in particular, and that's of course the focus for scrutiny this evening, because that's the key next step. We'll obviously have a conversation within the Part B element of the programme, but you'll note alongside considering the contract, it's subject to confirmation of funding. We have a funding package in place, subject to some further due process by the council and by the county council. But what I'll do is I'll pass over to Lee to get into the detail of the procurement process and how we did that. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Rory, and good evening, everyone. So fundamentally, I'm just going to mention that Heather Northey is online. Heather is our Senior Contracts Manager and managed this entire trial process. So thank you for joining us, Heather. Hopefully we'll get into some detail. The full procurement process completed following achieving that milestone that we've just mentioned, planning consent 252034 achieved last week. So we're excited to keep the momentum behind the scheme, and the work that's been carried out was fundamentally a competitive process, competitive tender process to seek to award a design and build contractor. That process involves analysis of tender returns, contractor interviews, a reconciliation of the tender returns to make sure they are all aligned, and then fundamentally we go into a moderation panel to make sure there's any final tweaks, and then we're presenting within this process now for approval to proceed. The process therefore acts as a surety for everybody. The procurement management team within CCC have confirmed they are content with that piece being completed, that procurement piece being completed for assurance. I'm content with it. Heather's content with it. So fundamentally, we're here to see a preferred bidder as we move into Part B, hopefully supported with an award of a contract. And that's what we're seeking tonight, fundamentally. The insurance to make sure that we are content that that procurement process has been followed, and that we can proceed with the design and build award for phase 1 at Greensward.
Okay, thank you. Right, members, I'm sure you've all studied the report, and I saw that Councillor Smith had quite a large collection of questions, so I'm going to give you the floor first of all.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm pleased that we have Councillor Bourne back with us, because a lot of what I'm going to say relates to the project on first sight, which I know he also has the scars from how we did it and how a project went disastrously wrong. So please don't think that I'm being hostile to the project. The project is great and one I fully support. It's the financial aspects of it that I want to ensure this council is not having any risk of repeating the tragic mistakes that so nearly cost us an absolute fortune on there. First of all, the contract. Is it a fixed price contract?
So fundamentally, it will be fixed price from an element, because this is design and build, and it comes with 2 phases. There is a design element to it, and then a construction element to it.
So they will design it first, and then they will tell us how much it's going to cost. And if in the interim building costs have gone up, there is a potential for an additional shortfall.
Over 50% of the costs that they've tendered are fixed. The balance is what we call PC sums, provisional sums, and those provisional sums have been through two elements of rigour. The first element of rigour is Gleeds, who are a large cost management company and whom I trust personally, have effectively analysed those PC sums and made a recommendation that they believe they are in line with the original cost plan that they presented. And if I just hop back for 1 second, before we started the process, Gleeds undertook a complete cost management exercise looking at a bill of quants for the entire project. And for some further assurance, the recommendation that they made for the cost for the project was within a very small amount of how the tenders are actually returned on the day. So there is some comfort in that zone.
Can you explain why half the contract is fixed and the other half isn't? There must be some sort of dividing line so that we can understand the risk that's involved.
Yeah, it's a really good question. We are on a tight time frame. That time frame requires us to be in contract by March next year. There's obviously the governance element that we need to program in, but the avenue available to us identified as part of the procurement strategy was a design and build award contract. A design and build award contract means what it says on the tin. Fundamentally, we secure planning permission, which isn't a REBA stage 5 fully designed building and facilities. It's at 2 to 3, REBA stage 2 to 3. So there's still a number of risks in there. Mechanical, electrical, for example, is a risk. Foundations are a risk. We've got a number of structures that are a risk. The other element probably to talk about is the fact that this is partially a refurb. It's not new build, there is partial refurb. So we will be opening up that building and understanding and may bump into something that may be of risk.
Sorry, just jump in, Councillor Smith. I'm quite happy for this to and fro. It's very healthy, and we're getting some great clarity. Just for my benefit, the March point, that's the government-imposed deadline that we have to be in contract for. Is that correct? So if we're not in contract by March, then potentially we are liable to return some monies. Is that the truth? Okay. Thank.
Thank you. Right. It's interesting you mentioned about the foundations, because I recall when we built the original St Anne's Centre, there was problems with some fuel tanks, I believe, because it was built on an old petrol station, and that incurred the council in substantial additional costs at that point. I'm sorry about this being a trip down memory lane, but those are the sorts of risks that we are liable for.
So one of the pieces that is essential to try and close down that risk is due diligence. And the due diligence specifically in terms of foundations are that we've completed full geotechnical investigations to the site and the surrounding area. And one of the stages, like I said to you, as we roll through the various REBA stages, at one of those stages we changed that design because that additional data comes into the site of the design team. Originally we had piling, and then we refine it as we've got those geotechnical data.
Thank you. The second point is one which my colleague, Councillor Moffat, asked for. Details about the due diligence that we've done on the contractor. Again, going back to first sight, we appointed a contractor who didn't have much experience of doing this project. Indeed, their home council would give them a contract limit of 1 million, and we gave them a contract limit of, I think it was 10 or 12 million pounds. It didn't come out well. Two were a family-run company. So can you give us some evidence on how you've done the due diligence?
No problem, thank you. So two elements that all the contractors were assessed before giving the opportunity to tender, and they're assessed similar to what you just said. That's very incisive. They are assessed on the value of the projects, the experience they have in that zone before they're permitted to then tender. So first stage of the analysis was we had expressions of interest. We then filter through all of those expressions of interest, rating that contractor against this specific project to make sure they have experience in the sector, that they've worked within the local authority sector, and that they have the financial facilities and robustness in order to deliver a project of this size.
Have you got that financial information available? Because some members might find that useful, particularly at cabinet level to actually see it for themselves, to see what the balance sheet looked like and what have you. So in case there are any weaknesses that I may not spot them, but there are others who might be able to do so.
I don't have it to hand. If I can just ask Heather in the background to pull that information up, because I think Heather's probably got it at her fingertips.
Thank you. I appreciate that may well need to go into the confidential section.
You happy at the moment, Councillor Smith? You've asked all you need to at this stage, or you want more?
I have points which I think will probably be better in the confidential section, relating to terms of leases and that sort of thing.
Okay, okay. Councillor Rippingale.
So my questions really are around the funding sources, obviously, to pay for this, and the governance around that. So has government provided written confirmation that the Pride in Place funding can be released in the terms of the Town Deal funding deadline? And my understanding is that the neighbourhood board model is not operational yet for this funding, and what governance route will we be using to approve that Pride in Place funding? My concern is around the optics of shifting that money, and I think that we need to protect ourselves as a council, given that that governance procedure has been put in place and it's not the same boards. And that's just me putting that out there now to think about how the optics would look to the rest of the city. Also, what contingency planning have we got in place for alternative funding sources in case that funding is delayed or not released early? And the contributions that are coming from Essex County Council and Colchester City Council, have they been formally approved and budgeted? And can you identify from our funding where they will be coming from? And if not, what is the timeline for the confirmation on that funding? Thank you.
Who fancies this? Rory?
I'm happy to say that. I'm mindful some of the conversation we might go into Part B in terms of sources of funding. In terms of Pride in Place, you're absolutely right around the governance. And to be clear, that's not council money. There would be an accountable body for it, but you need to have in place, as you've rightly said, the neighbourhood board. We've already heard the MP's support, but you're absolutely right. I think possibly in terms of sources of funding, we'll pick that up in the Part B. We have a package of funding available. The reason we can't go into the detail now is because there is still some governance process to go through, and we can pick that up.
Okay, let's see sequentially. Councillor Bourne, do you have any questions at this stage?
No, can I just... knocking the coffee out. With your indulgence, could I just say a big thank you to the officers, because they spent an awful lot of time allowing me to catch up and going through a lot of the detail, and I think they were incredibly patient, and they seemed to me to be remarkably competent. But anyway, a big thank you to them. And just to address Councillor Smith, it was a very long time ago, and I think I've probably done 200 assessments since then. They usually give me a team to do it, but I have got some comments to make about this, and I did share some of them with Rory, but I think probably best to leave the substantive remarks about the tender and all that to Part 2.
Okay, Part B. Right. Councillor Snakes, you're next in line.
Yes, I'm really pleased to find myself in line with what's been said by Councillor Smith and Councillor Rippingale. And absolutely, in principle of what we're trying to achieve, I'm right there. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Our responsibility, however, is for delivery. And there we have really failed in the past. And first sight is, I wasn't here then, I'm new. But I know what a stink there was about it. I couldn't give you the details, but I know there was a stink and there were overruns everywhere. And I've done inner city development. I've worked with the Bromley by Bow team. I'm used to bottom up. I know what a Green Book appraisal looks like. So please listen to what I've got to say without any arrogance at all. what I've got to say is important. We're so doing this in the wrong way round. Either it's being done in the wrong way round, or else there's a real lack of transparency on it. I think it's just being done the wrong way round. When you're developing a site like this, you don't start off with issuing tendering for contracts. Don't do that. You've master planned the site, and you look at all the interconnectivities. We should have a master plan by now for phase 2. We should know what we're doing. We should know how we're going to build it. We should know how we access it, how the interconnections work between the two. We should have an appraisal for it. And most importantly, if we did that, we'd have every chance of being able to finance the shortfall from within this site. And I say that because if you look at the Green Book appraisal of this, which Rory kindly sent me a couple of years ago, I've been following this for a while now, and still not really got close to it. But when I look at the Green Book appraisal, the biggest item there is land value uplift on the housing site. £6 million of land value uplift was assumed at that time. This is what we're accountable for delivering. Some of that should be going into building the community centre. That's not normally happens. It's the housing cross-subsidises the community assets. That's the whole principle. But we don't seem to have looked at that. If there is an appraisal, it's not in the public domain. If there is a master plan, it's not in the public domain. If this has been scrutinised by someone from a practical delivery point of view, rather than the heart and soul and objectives point of view, which I appreciate, okay, that's important, then that's not in the public domain. We are the accountable body. We need to look at the hard finances and make sure we know what's in that contract, what we're building, the practical down-to-earth things. And I'd expect to see that by now, this is 5 years this has been going on, isn't it? And now we're suddenly rushing to get a tender issued in front of a grant deadline. I'd expect to see all those things in place before we did the tender. And I'm saying that in the public domain. I wouldn't expect you to disclose necessarily everything in the public domain, but I think it's at a strategic level that we're getting this wrong, and I have a suggestion for a recommendation for Cabinet, which will, as the questions are answered, will get shorter and shorter. But at the moment it's saying the Cabinet should approve this when they've got this, this, this and this, and they're bits of paper which shouldn't take long to prepare, because basically we've got to get on with it.
So I actually agree with you in part, and the original, I mean, none of us were involved in writing the original business case for this, but the original premise was that there would be a master plan for the whole area. There would be estate regeneration. It's not, there's no blank housing sites. This would be about proper estate regeneration. So demolition, rebuilding of properties. Some of it was about acquiring properties from, at that time, Notting Hill Genesis. And that would have been the original plan, to have started with a master plan and worked through the whole project. If you remember, the town deal bids were, I think they were announced in 2021, but they were conceived in 2019, and then COVID hit. So there was quite a significant period of time where working with the community, being able to proactively progress what would need to be a community driven, because don't forget, the minute you start to get into estate regeneration, you're knocking down properties, you're talking about people's homes. So 2 years effectively were lost at the beginning where we were able to do that detailed work with the community. The decision was taken quite early on that we would have to chunk the Heart of Greenstead out into 2 phases. And I came in off the back of that decision because I asked the same question, where's the master plan? And understandably, we were not in a position. We also had, and Julie will remember this, had a 2-year battle to get Notting Hill Genesis to sell us some of the properties that were key to that estate regeneration. So sorry for the background detail. There's a lot of information here that meant that we were then faced with effectively very little time to deliver community facilities, an expectation that the existing community centre would be demolished and a new one built, no time to deliver that, and also the cost of that way over what we had originally in the budget. So a decision was taken halfway through the project to effectively separate out phase 1 and phase 2 and start again. so we didn't lose the Heart of Greensted money, so that we could at least deliver the community element of it in a hub fashion, delivering the public realm so that it was a connected centre, but it absolutely then needs to sit in the middle of a master plan for the wider development. So I agree with you, it's a bit back to front, and Rory will remember, because I came in and said, why are we not doing a master plan for this whole site? I'd already done one for the city centre. We were working on the city centre one. It's the way it needs to sit. We had to adapt and act quickly. So, where we are, I think, is a good compromise, because we have looked at the entire site, House St Edmund's House, the GP strategy, GP surgery, the public realm, and the buildings all tied together. We've already started conversations with the co-op and the other retailers about what the second phase would look like. But we need to land this, because we have a community, as has been described by a lot of our members, who are very distrustful of the council. So again, we need to get some momentum and some confidence to then be able to start what is, I've been involved in estate regeneration in London boroughs, and if you don't get your community engagement right from the start, you will not deliver anything. It is really hard work. So, that's why the decision was taken to change the project round. So I actually agree with you in terms of that would have been the best approach right from the beginning.
How could we get these bits of information? How can we catch it up and turn it around? To me, community engagement is about building credibility and delivery, not just about having more quangos and boards, and which are wonderful things to have. But really, if you look at Bromley by Bow, that was very strongly led from the centre. It just was. Yes, they managed to bring the community with them in a very successful way, but we need to be competent here to have the trust and confidence of the community. They will smell it. If we've got everything the wrong way round, that will come out. How can we turn it round? That's the question.
So again, all really good points. I think the speakers already today have kind of talked to the sense that something feels different with the community. There is a degree of trust that I believe wasn't there before, and I'm looking at Julie, because Julie would tell me, and Tim certainly would tell me, and the board, you've heard already this evening, they hold our feet to the flames in terms of doing this appropriately and certainly developing credibility with the community. We've had other strands to the project, and we haven't focused on those tonight because obviously we're looking at the contract. But actually, through the provision of kind of free bicycles, we've used those as almost a currency to develop relationships with the community. It's had an impact, and the community is feeling the benefit of that, and they're finally seeing investment from authorities, be it the council, be it other funders, contributors, the ICB, etc. And I think that's helped that credibility. And building on Lindsay's point, and accepting all of your points too, bringing forward these investments in the community assets specifically now, I think will further enhance the relationship we have with the local groups, stakeholders in the community. That would enable us then to get on with the master planning, and our relationship will be starting in a completely different place. I was certainly involved in very early conversations and had some very challenging and difficult conversations with members of the community in the way that Julie's said around feeling let down. It does feel different now.
But now actual delivery is needed, not words and committees. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose a motion at some point, and I presume you wanted to let other people speak before I do.
Well, I think we need to go into private session to look at some of the confidential.
The motion can be in public session, except that some of the questions might be asked in private session. No, I think it can be in public session. I think everything I'm asking for can be in the public domain.
Okay. Okay. Let's progress a little bit further though. So everyone's had some airtime, but except for yourself. Do you have any questions that are non-confidential?
I have two non-confidential questions, Chair, if that's okay. Yep, thank you, Chair. So from my perspective, totally agree with the high level objectives of this, the 100% the emotional side of this, completely get why we're doing this and understand the point of view that's already been expressed. I appreciate some of the questions that Councillor Smith has already asked. Taken a couple of my questions away already, so that's quite useful. But two things from my side. I think we've mentioned already about the funding and the gaps in funding. I mean, can we have like a sort of in the public realm an assurance that Colchester at no point will be on the hook and it won't come out of the Colchester budget or reserves, that will be on the hook for the funding? I mean, can we guarantee that at this point? Can we have an assurance that this won't affect Colchester's budget?
No, we can't do that. That's what we can do, but I prefer to do it. I think it's better. A better conversation in the private session is talk through where we're at and where this might go. We've got a responsibility here to our residents to deliver really the sum of the Town Deal programme, most of which is underway or actually has been put through. This, however, is the prime project for all the reasons well you accept and we've rehearsed. So when we're that close, we're not going to turn away from the funding gap, which in the round, or we judge we can manage. We're talking about how and who with, and we've been talking to county about that. But no, I can't say that there won't be a call on our budget. No more than I could say we weren't going to repair the bridge at Middle Mill. You know, things happen, costs emerge, issues we can see, get a price tag to them. That's what we're talking about tonight. Funding, we'll have to address that with our partners, but there will be a call upon our budget. That's not a surprise.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I'm assuming that will be in the budget and that we'll have that sort of clarified as best as we can.
There is no spare slush fund. Everything we do has to be clear and accountable. And it's worth saying this, that cross-party discussions on the budget have started in effect because we're talking about land acquisition and disposals. We've done that through the HRA. We're doing that through the estates group. So I don't want there to be an impression left that we're anything other than fully transparent. And scrutiny will be earlier than it sometimes has been, Chairman, and I welcome that too. So by stage, through the process ahead, we will show, as we can decide and as we agree with partners, what the call is.
Yeah, appreciate that. Second point is around the delivery and sort of tangible, measurable percentages. Now, apologies, I didn't read the full green book. There's a lot of documentation and do have a job. I apologise. I didn't get through the whole thing. And if this has already been shown somewhere, I think it's a good opportunity for us to be able to say it in public. So I'd just like to ask sort of in the public realm, what are the tangible, measurable percentages? And I think sort of, Councillor Young has said, possibly both Councillor Youngs have said it, that there's a gap between the life expectancy in Greenstead versus all of the other wards. How do we expect that to change through the investment that we're making here? And what are the other measurable, tangible results that we're going to get out of this investment? And I think if we put that in the public domain, I think that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Go on, Councillor Smith. You're worried this is straying away, aren't you?
No, I'm actually right. I think you're slightly misrepresenting what Councillor Tim Young said. That he said the life expectancy is 10 years lower on Greenstead than on the average across Colchester.
Let's get Councillor J Young, just to clarify. Hang on, Councillor Rowe.
It's healthy life expectancy, and the gap is actually 15 years from the most healthy wards to Greenstead.
Rory.
So, it's a really complex question. I think we had a similar conversation when we took the health and wellbeing place partnership approach to scrutiny and then to cabinet, because there is no single thing. The determinants of health are wide and vast, and the reasons that people are experiencing the health outcomes they have are deep-rooted and associated with all manner of things. What I would say is what we are able to do, and we began to talk about it when we talked about some of the data that we hold. So we know that 5% of the population are driving 50% of the cost for some of the principal statutory services, certainly around primary care and social care. So the value or the consequences of not trying to shift the model and shift the way of delivering services means that we are going to continue to deal with poor demand and kind of costly demand to both Colchester Council services, but more broadly health services and certainly social care. And we know we've got some real challenges in this part of North East Essex because of our demographics leading into local government reorganisation. So as a new unitary authority equally, we know that we have over the hill some real challenges. So we need to shift the model and the approach. So I don't think we're ever going to be able to give you, if we do this, there will be a specific thing. And as far as I'm aware, certainly all of the kind of academics and public health colleagues would probably share that view too. But it's about turning the dial, doing lots of things across all of the parameters that influence people's health, and then looking at certain indicators that begin to give you a measure that you're on the right lines. So healthy life expectancy isn't a great measure because actually that will be achieved over the long term. But there will be various things that we'll be able to look at in terms of health and well-being that will give us an indicator that we're on the right path to closing that gap.
So
Can I just come back on that as well, Chair, because I think it's a really important question. And I think, it will be part of, we keep talking about the building here, but actually it's about what it enables. And it enables a very different delivery of services into a community. And Councillor Young has already talked about the pilot we're involved in. There will be an expectation, because that pilot is part of the 10-year NHS plan. There will be an expectation measures are put in place. So you can start to track not only pressure on health services and, it's all about kind of trying to pull upstream and trying to tackle issues earlier so they don't hit in a more costly way onto health. So there will be measures, but you're not going to get them next year. They're going to take time to come in. The only thing I wanted to say, just by way of example as well, is that, and it's a statistic that has troubled Pam and I for many years, is that, for quite some time, Colchester and Tendring had the highest levels of suicide, particularly amongst young people in the country. And from some very consolidated effort over a number of years, that tide has started to turn. We are no longer in that position. So, it's only one particular aspect, but because everyone is focused on it, and there's been a lot of multi-agency work to try and look at how do you change our overall approach to this, you can have an impact, and you can start to see that impact within a shorter term. Some of the bigger issues that we're talking about here have been in those communities for decades. You're never going to turn around immediately, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't start.
Councillor Rowe, and then I've got Councillor Rippingell.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate that. But what I'm trying to get at is what are the measures that it sounds to me like we don't really know what the measures are. And ultimately, we're going to say that there's going to be an improvement because we're going to put this investment in place. We don't know what the improvement is going to be. So we'll look at the statistics as they come out in the future, and then we'll pick out the things that effectively prove our case. And that seems to be what you're saying. If you can't provide to me, well, what's going to be improved at this stage? Because obviously we're sort of at the business case stage of it, sort of identifying what. So we must have some idea as, I mean, you mentioned suicide, for example. Do we think there's going to be a tangible change in that? Do we think there's going to be a tangible change in the number of, people from Greenstead not going to, I don't know, sort of healthcare elsewhere in the, right, so those type of things would be really useful to just know, right? And I think it would be useful for the people watching at home to say, we are looking to spend £8 million of taxpayers' money. These are the things that we think are going to improve. And when we come back in X number of years and we look at it after it's been, then we can say, yes, it's been a success and fantastic. We can all pat ourselves on the back. Thank you.
Let's use microphones because I thought.
So I think we can provide that information. So we're really clear on what causes poor health in the population in North East Essex, and it's things like cardiovascular disease, it's a respiratory disease, it's kind of illnesses linked to us becoming frail, and it's poor mental health. And within those, there are a number of indicators that we'll be able to track along the lines of what I was saying in terms of measures of we're on the right, we're going in the right direction. And of course, the drivers of all of those illnesses are what sit within the kind of the wider determinants of health. So poor housing, not access to employment skills, etc., all influence the health outcomes we see as illnesses. So we will see those indicators, and through our partnership approach and the significant amount of data we hold with our health partners, we'll be able to monitor that.
Leader.
I think we have to accept it's entirely the right point, and we're almost there. It will be absolutely appropriate to be brave enough to take away the challenge of working out with our counterparts, including nationally. So we are a national pilot. There will be expectations. They will have a view on what they should be and what they would consider to be an acceptable time frame. We should want them to be demanding, because that then presses us not just to deliver this programme, which we must, but within the structure that provides us, with partners, then deliver the outcomes using those better facilities. So I value the question, thank you, and I think we should take that away.
Councillor Ripping-Gale.
I completely agree with Councillor Rowe. I think it would be useful for all members to have that baseline to understand how we track our performance, because at the moment it's quite abstract for us, and I think actually for those more financially minded among us, to have that clear numbers to say, we're looking for a 5% drop in suicide over a period. Do you know what I mean? I understand with health that's difficult because things change. I suppose my question was more about the schemes that you're putting in place and the development you're doing. Do you anticipate that will start to benefit the neighbouring wards who equally have levels of deprivation, and what those services will give to those, for instance, neighbours essentially? In my ward, I have an area where crime is at 99% of national average, and similar things. So it'd be really interesting to see how the project would benefit the wider community as well, and understand that.
So what I'm taking away, Chairman and panel, is a need to continue the dialogue with you around health improvement in Colchester. And I'm mindful of the focus of the decision certainly tonight around the contract, but really happy to work with members and panel around giving you that assurance in terms of Healthline-based data, how investing in a particular area has the wider benefit to Colchester, and how people outside of that area will benefit equally, and then what the rollout looks like in terms, certainly from a neighbourhood health perspective, and how services will be developed in other areas in addition to Greenstead. So happy to pick that up. And the Health and Wellbeing Board, so thank you, Lindsay, is an excellent place to do that.
And I think it goes back to what we've discussed several times, is about communication to members on these big projects, because they can be quite abstract. And I think effectively you've come here and asking us to spend £8 million, and we all know that it's for a good thing, but it's what does that look like in 5 years' time? And then also the optics of it, Grints has been awarded another £20 million, so it's like, well, what's that going to look like, and how's that going to complement this scheme? And having, like you said, Lindsay, that master plan of those two pots of funding, how does that look in 10 years' time? I think at the moment for me, I've walked the site and I understand it, but it still feels quite abstract in that respect, and how it, like you, Lindsay, I would love to knock down parts of Grinstead and rebuild it, but in the nicest way, because there are issues with the houses, and and we've got so much more legislation coming through around damp and mould, and that's going to be a major challenge for this council to manage that. I just think from our perspective, we're seeing this huge investment, and we want to be assured that we're going to get good. I don't want to be here we might not be here in 5 years' time, sitting here and going, oh, we haven't achieved because we didn't understand the baseline.
I think Rory has agreed, and there's a mechanic for that. Good news, hopefully, to be reported in the future, albeit in the medium term, when we actually see some tangibility. Okay, Councillor Sunnox.
Yes, I think this is a really good debate, and Councillor Rippingale and others are grasping at a major problem, which is that we've got a sort of Treasury high-level economists approach, and we have it here. Someone has estimated that the health and well-being benefits, no one's looked at it, of course, because it's so difficult, so it's so abstract. But in the business plan, it did say that health and well-being benefits would give us 3.5 million out of the total 17 million of benefits. And just for interest, it was worked out that this project would give a cost-benefit ratio of 2.4, which is not bad at all. Okay, but the question is, will we get the benefits? The big ones are land value uplift, employment benefits, and these health and well-being benefits. So, the problem is, we're never really going to see those coming through. And in terms of practical project management, this is of no use at all. We'll know in 10 years' time whether this delivered health and well-being benefits. We might not even know them. By then it will have been swept away, there will be a unitary, everyone will have forgotten. Perhaps Councillor Bourne will be back for a third stint.
Councillor Sykes, I'm conscious that we probably do want to get into part B at some point, but
I'm going to propose
indicated earlier on you had a proposal.
I have a proposal.
So I'll give you the floor for that, if that's...
Right. Proposal is that we pass a resolution, something like this, and that people have to help me take the jagged bits out of it. That the Scrutiny Panel, having considered the report on the proposed contract award for the Heart of Greenstead Phase 1 construction works, recommends that Cabinet should approve the contract award and seek the following clarifications and assurances provided. Okay, so I'm not making it conditional, I'm saying go ahead with it, but for goodness sake, get on with turning this project round into the right order. Okay. The first one, funding for the budget shortfall, clear identification of the Council's financial exposure, including how much of the confirmed shortfall for Phase 1 falls to City Council and from which approved budget the Council proposes to meet its contribution. That will obviously have to go into the confidential bit. And it may be that we drop it out. The next one, whole scheme planning and interdependencies. Sharing of a master plan and financial appraisals covering all phases of the Heart of Greenstead project, community facilities, housing redevelopment and later phases, including the interrelationship of phases, decant strategy, access and delivery sequencing. So to have a sort of plan of how we're going to do it. Doesn't have to be a long one, but some diagrams and so on. Third one, use of land value uplift. Clarification of the land value uplift identified in the Green Book business case, that's the 6 million, and an explanation of why proceeds from the housing development cannot be applied to identified funding shortfall for Phase 1, noting that this is standard practice in mixed scheme regeneration projects. The last one of all, very simple, clarification of the portfolio holder responsible for the scheme and its financial outcome. There's so many committees here that we need one person politically accountable who will probably not the leader because he's accountable for everything, but someone needs to focus on this properly.
Okay.
Should we leave that?
Well, that was what I was going to suggest.
Yeah.
You've been very candid with the detail. Why don't we move into part B, try and get our head around some of the numbers, and then if we need to, we come back into public. Yeah. And we can see where we're at and whether you've been satisfied with what you've heard. If we need to have a discussion with you, do that.
Okay.
All right. Everyone happy? Councillor Smith, can we go into private? Are you happy?
Yes, I was thinking that's a very sensible way, because I don't think we can sensibly agree to this until we've looked at some of the figures in the private session. So I'm sure Councillor Sunnox doesn't normally issue blank cheques to the administration.
Okay, folks, well, I propose we move into private session. We need to have a vote on that to make sure everyone's happy we do that. So are we happy to go into private? I see everyone happy to do that.
Chair, I have a
motion
to read out.
To read, yes. And then we will then suspend the live feed, and we will then potentially come back in to public, if we want to, at the end of that for a further discussion around some of the recommendations we've just heard. Okay, so in accordance with section 100A (4) of the Local Government Act 1972, and in accordance with the local authorities' executive arrangements, access to information, England Regulations 2000 as amended to exclude the public, including the press, from the meeting, so that any items containing exempt information, for example, confidential, personal, financial, or legal advice in Part B of this agenda, can be decided. Exempt information is defined in Section 100I and Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972.